The Where Our Minds Wander podcast may contain sensitive content and explicit language. Listener discretion is advised. Greetings, fellow wanderers, to the places our minds wander.
The house at the end of the dirt road, where disembodied voices whisper and strange sounds make the living shiver.
Where shadows lurk at the edge of the woods, just outside your back door. And mysterious lights speed beyond reason across the clear night sky.
Odd events throughout time that lead you down the rabbit hole.
I'm Wes.
And I'm Beth.
And this is Where Our Minds Wander. Hello and welcome to Where Our Minds Wander, all you fellow wanderers. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, everyone.
Well, Beth, you want to tell them about your boo-boos you made last week?
Sure. I was going to ask if I could do that before we got started. So, I don't like making mistakes on our show, but sometimes they sneak through and we don't catch them till they're too late. And I know what I meant to say, but I just kind of cross my fingers and hope that all of you listening also know what I meant to say, and you forgive us, or me in this case.
Yeah, it wasn't my mistake.
No. But luckily, I have to say, we have the best listeners, because never has anyone nailed us for mistakes that we've made. And they certainly could, but they haven't done that.
Oh, I've listened to other podcasts where it seems like weekly they get tons of comments or emails about how they mispronounce something or, seems pretty bad, but we have the best listeners.
I know. We're lucky.
We really are. We don't get any hate. We get all good emails.
I know. Well, now we'll get hate emails because we put it out there into the world, but we appreciate all of you and for accepting that we are flawed individuals.
Well, certainly you are.
Yeah.
I mispronounce things.
Yeah. I made 2 major mistakes last week. 2.
I mean, I really try. I always look up the pronunciations and everything like that, but sometimes my mouth just doesn't make the words.
Yeah. Well, I've mispronounced things too.
And plus, I talk a little North Country, the way I talk, and a little bit Canadian in some ways.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, well.
Well, anyway, in the very beginning of the episode last week, when I said episode 2005, I meant 205.
Can you imagine 2005? That would take us like 20 years.
I know.
I could quite possibly be doing it in another 20 years. But that would make me 83. Could happen.
Maybe. If our listeners stick with us, they'll, be 20 years older too.
They'll be here.
Yeah. So the other mistake that I made was at the end of the show when we were joking about how every time I used to go on vacation, bad things would happen after I came home. And I mentioned Yosemite National Park. And to be clear, I did go to Yosemite on that trip. But the park that I really meant to say was
Jellystone National Park with Yogi.
Yeah. I meant Yellowstone. That's the one with the geysers and the thermal pools where a ranger could fall through. And I do know the difference. And it was much later after the episode had gone out where I was like, oh my gosh, I said Yosemite and I meant Yellowstone.
So I wonder if you're the one that's responsible for killing off Yogi Bear and Boo Boo.
No, I'm not going to take credit for that.
I don't think they're having any more picnics at Jellystone National Park.
I vaguely remember that from when I was a kid.
Really?
Yeah, and I think even then it was reruns.
More than likely. It was a good cartoon.
Yeah?
Yeah, for the most part. I remember it growing up.
Did he wear a tie and a hat?
Yes, he did.
Okay, I did see it.
Well, enough of the nostalgia that probably none of you know about.
Maybe not.
Yeah. Well, why don't you kick it off and tell us what you're going to mess up tonight?
Oh, thank you. I actually have kind of a serious story that I'm starting us off with, but then you get to hit him with the humorous one in the second half.
I've got a great story lined up for everybody tonight.
Yeah. So, if I put everybody in a down mood, just hang on and Wes will bring you back up again.
Or skip her section and just jump to mine.
They could do that. That is an option. All right, so I'm going to get started. If you were to go to the theater today, whether you were seeing a play or a movie in a fancy movie house, one of the first things you might notice in any theater are the illuminated exit signs. Aisles are often illuminated too, so that even when the lights go down, there is a visible marker pointing you towards the exits. There are well-maintained fire escapes. There are sprinkler systems. There are fire-retardant stage curtains. All of these things are necessary, and for most of us, it seems like a no-brainer. Of course you would have fire codes and exit strategies for a room that holds hundreds of audience members. But unfortunately, in 1903, 602 people, including many children, had to die at just one performance for these fire codes to be mandated. The James M. Nederlander Theater in Chicago, Illinois, was built in 1926 and has had several names, including the Colonial Theater and the Oriental. But what many people may not know is that another theater existed before it on the very same spot, and that was the site of the most horrific theater fire in the entire world's history. So much so that the alley behind the theater, Couch Place, has also been known as the Alley of Death for over 120 years. According to Atlas Obscura, the Iroquois Theater in Chicago was putting on a matinee performance of Mr. Bluebeard, a play geared towards children. Now, this was 1903, so even the plot of this play doesn't seem all that kid-friendly in our 2026 minds. But here's the basic plot. A man married several women, just so he could murder them and hide their bodies in a closet. Yes, this was considered a children's musical comedy, but it was starring well-known actor Eddie Foy, so it was a huge draw for the post-Christmas family crowd of Chicago. The Iroquois Theater was not entirely finished in December of 1903. But they had advertised in the city papers that they were, quote, absolutely fireproof. They had installed a skylight that was specifically designed to let out smoke. They had several fire exit doors and metal fire escapes. So, despite not being entirely finished, the Chicago city officials performed a cursory fire inspection and okayed the opening. The theater manager was ecstatic. With an early opening, they'd be sure to bring in a lot more money. They sold out all 1,724 seats to the matinee performance on December 30th. In addition, they let in an extra 200 people as standing room only. Now, this next part had me a little confused. It said in both articles that I looked at that there was a concern in 1903 that people would try to sneak into the more expensive seats. So the theater closed and locked the accordion metal doors, sealing off the balcony seats from the main floor. But here's what's confusing to me. If the entire theater was sold out, how could there have been open seats for people to take? Anyway, according to CBSNews.com, the play started off just fine, entertaining the close to 2,000 audience members. But at 3:15 p.m. during the second act, while ballerinas danced across the stage, one of the electric spotlights sparked. The spark caught the nearby curtain, which jumped almost immediately to the oil-painted backdrops hanging from oiled ropes. At first, Eddie Foy came on stage and reassured everyone not to panic. He even sang a little song in between his explanations that people could calmly make their way to the exits if they wished to do so. The stage crew quickly tried to lower an asbestos fire curtain, but it snagged on some lighting equipment and stopped halfway down. So next, or maybe simultaneously, they worked on opening that skylight, the one that was designed to allow smoke and flame to travel straight upwards rather than out towards the audience. It, however, appeared to be nailed shut and could not be opened. Although almost the entire audience was still seated, the actors tried to exit the building. And when they did, the gust of frigid outside air caused a massive fireball to shoot out across the stage directly at the still seated audience. In the upper levels, the now panicked balcony audience rushed towards the stairs, only to find themselves sealed off by that locked metal accordion door. In a sheer panic, they fled back towards the second floor fire escapes, which were both unfinished and frozen, and they couldn't be lowered. This was when many people began jumping to the ground on Couch Place, and it was said that only some of the second and third wave of jumpers survived because of the layer of 120 bodies on the ground already who cushioned their fall. Across the alley, petrified workers at Northwestern University tried to lower planks from their building to the theater to help people get across. Many people, of course, fell. Downstairs, people rushed towards several ornamental doors that weren't actual doors. 200 bodies were found in a single passageway leading to one of these false doors. As more people got to the 30 unmarked exit doors, they pushed and pushed, but none of them would open. Turns out several of them were padlocked shut, because again, they didn't want people sneaking in for a free show. Even the main entrance doors out in the lobby were kind of messed up. As people pushed and pushed on those, they wouldn't open either, because as it turned out, they opened inwards, which, even if the people had realized, would have been impossible to do with the crush of bodies pressing against them from behind. There was literally no way out of the Iroquois Theater. And the fire trucks weren't coming. Because, of course, there were no fire alarms connected to the actual building. An employee who had made it out ran to the corner of Randolph and Dearborn Streets and pulled a fire alarm there. By 3:30, just 15 minutes after the blaze started, 571 people were dead. The following day, the Chicago Tribune published the following, quote, "Of the dead, less than 100 were identified last night. Of the unidentified, nearly all were so badly burned that recognition was impossible. Only by trinkets and burned scraps of wearing apparel will the bodies of hundreds be known to their families." End quote. Within the following weeks, due to their injuries, the total had risen to 602 people. In contrast, the CBS News article points out that only 300 people died in the Great Chicago Fire of 1871. Of the 300 performers that day, 5 of them died. One of them, a Miss Nellie Reed, was trapped above the stage where she had been waiting for her cue to fly across it on a trolley wire, showering the audience with pink carnations. She fell to the stage and died from her burns and internal injuries 3 days later. Well-known Chicago reporter William Elton wrote, quote, "The dead lay literally in heaps. Frail women gasped for the last time from mounds of corpses. Puny children sighed their lives away, while an eager, morbid crowd pressed forward to look on the face of death. It was more horrible than war, more terrifying than pestilence." End quote. By New Year's Day, 19 theaters and museums in Chicago were shut down due to fire code violations. Numerous people were brought up on charges. Obviously, the Iroquois Theater's owner and manager, but also various city officials, including the mayor. The only charges that stuck were against a saloon owner who had gone around pickpocketing the dead. Ironically, despite the interior being nothing more than ash, the Iroquois Theater building itself did not burn down. It reopened not long after as the Colonial Theater. It stood until 1925, when it was torn down to make room for the even more opulent Oriental Theater, a movie house that also brought in big-name stars like Judy Garland, Al Jolson, and the Three Stooges. The Oriental was, and still is, astounding in its beauty. There's no way to describe it other than it looks like the Palace of Versailles, with its red velvet curtains and ornately carved golden balconies. It truly looks like it was picked up from some French castle and plopped down in the middle of Chicago. Over the years, the Oriental hosted performers like Fanny Brice, Ella Fitzgerald, Anne Margaret, Jean Harlow, Billie Holiday, Bob Hope, Frank Sinatra, Eartha Kitt, Danny Kaye, and Penn and Teller. The Oriental shut down in 1981, but was restored and reopened in 1998 under the new name, the Ford Center for the Performing Arts at the Oriental Theater. This was when the first largely publicized accounts of the theater being haunted really took off, all because of actress Anna Gasteyer agreeing to be on an episode of Celebrity Ghost Stories. But prior to that, actors, stagehands, and audience members had been talking about the ghosts for for years. Usually, it's during rehearsals, when actors on stage will glance up to see shadowy figures moving around in the balcony seats. But others have been standing near the stage door that leads out onto Couch Place, otherwise known as the Alley of Death, and heard voices crying out for help. Additionally, people walking along the Alley of Death have heard these cries for help coming up from the sewer grates. There have also been several photos of the alley that show strange orbs. It's easy to imagine why, of course, since the alley was, at one point, filled with almost 600 bodies waiting to be brought to the morgue. But even other buildings claim to have residual hauntings that stem back to that fire, like Marshall Field's department store, which was used as a triage hospital and morgue. Since 2006, the building has been a Macy's, and all kinds of ghost stories have come from the 8th floor, where the morgue and hospital were said to have been. Now, I did find it odd that they'd bring fire victims all the way up to the 8th floor, but I did Google it, and it is true. I guess they chose that floor because at the time it was the furniture floor, and they treated victims with dish towels and bed sheets that they literally had just grabbed off the shelves. Some stories from Macy's are that employees would hear and see, quote, weird things when they'd be at their employee lockers on the 8th floor. If you go to Macy's now, I guess from the 7th floor up, it's all offices and rarely used space. But back to Anna Gasteyer and her segment on celebrity ghost stories from 2011. I watched the segment while I was researching this, and it was definitely interesting. I 100% believed her story. She starred as Elphaba in Wicked from 2005 to 2006 at the Ford Center for the Performing Arts at the Oriental Theater. First, she said in the segment that the alley behind the theater used to freak her out. She described it as always having the, quote, gloomiest, darkest, most dismal feeling, and that it felt terrible. But at the end of Act 1 of Wicked, she described the climactic scene where the stage would fill with smoke and fog as Elphaba learns to fly. She said that numerous times during performances that she would be suspended above the stage, and as she glanced into the wings, she'd see groups of people gathered there, as if they were watching as families. But when her feet touched down on stage again and she'd glance over, there wouldn't be anyone there except the usual stagehands. She also said that the corridors leading from the stage to the dressing rooms were long and dark and kind of like a labyrinth. A few times, as she was walking through them alone, she'd think that she had heard a child's voice. One time, when she turned a corner, she was pretty startled to see a woman and 2 young children standing at the end of the hall near a stairwell. At first, she thought they were fellow actors in costumes because they were dressed like it was the early 1900s or very late 1800s, which made no sense since there wouldn't have been a second cast doing a completely different play in the same theater at the same time. But that's what her rational brain told her. So, She nodded at this woman and 2 children. The woman nodded back, but the expression on her face, which was rather stoic, didn't change. The 3 of them, the mother and the 2 children, turned and walked away. But Gasteyer knew that when she reached the corner and turned, she'd inevitably run into them. But when she turned the corner herself, the entire hall was empty. She says in the segment that when she told her dresser about it later, her dresser very nonchalantly said that they were ghosts from the fire, and since the anniversary was coming up, she wasn't all that surprised to hear about them. Which is kind of interesting when you think about it, because if Gasteyer was seeing figures in the wings when the stage was filled with fog from the fog machines, it would look like real smoke, right? Like there's a fire happening in the theater. In 2019, the Oriental Theater was renamed once more to the James M. Nederlander Theater in honor of the Broadway theater owner and producer. This season, they are mounting productions of Spamalot, Kinky Boots, The Notebook, Jekyll and Hyde, Water for Elephants, with, yes, a real live elephant on stage, because I looked, and Les Mis, among other shows.
Well, that's definitely chilling and heartbreaking.
I know.
And if any place could be haunted, it would be this place.
Yeah. And looking at pictures of it online, I mean, they took a lot of photographs, and it really just looks like a pile of ash inside this theater. Like nothing is recognizable. You can sort of kind of tell that there were seats there, but it was an inferno.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we'll return after this short break.
And as promised, Wes has a humorous story for you. Hey, did you know? People have been known to accidentally drop all kinds of things down their toilets, especially phones, and in one case, for someone who shall remain nameless, a pair of eyeglasses. But recently, an excavation of a medieval latrine in Paderborn, Germany, revealed a remarkable find. A small wooden box containing an intricately decorated leather-bound notebook. The 700-year-old notebook, just 10 pages in length and 3 by 4 inches long, is filled with Latin writing done in wax. Which may seem odd, but it was an ingenious medieval way to make the notebook reusable. This incredible find is waiting to be translated, and hopefully it will offer even more clues as to what kind of medieval merchant may have accidentally lost it. Who'da thunk it?
All right, we are back from the break, and I just have to say, Beth, that I see you took a little jab at me in your Who'da Thunk It.
A little jab? What are you talking about?
Really? You're going to sit there and just giggle and play dumb until I say what it is?
I said it was someone who should remain nameless. You could remain nameless and not say that it was you who flushed your glasses down the toilet.
You know what happens? People drop all kinds of things in the toilet.
They do.
And when they're on your head and you look down and they went bloop, well, things just happen. Yes. Shit happens.
Luckily, that was not what it followed down the...
No, but it was quite funny. Alrighty, enough of that. For my story tonight, we're going to switch gears a little bit. So, Beth and I have watched Shark Tank for many years now, and we've seen some pretty great ideas that get deals on the show. But every once in a while, there are some real clunkers that are just so silly that we wonder why people think that they were a good idea to begin with. So I decided to do some looking through the Planet Patent website to see what kind of inventions have been patented over the years that are so outlandish that you can't help wonder what the inventor was thinking. So, with that said, sit back and get ready for some of the weirdest inventions throughout history. Rats were a huge problem back in 1882, and so inventor James A. Williams of Fredonia, Texas, had a brilliant solution. Instead of allowing rodents to make it into your house, why not eliminate them before they ever leave their underground homes? He said in his patent application, "The object of my invention is to provide a means by which animals which burrow in the ground can be destroyed, in which trap will give an alarm each time that it goes off so that it can be reset."
Sounds like a good idea.
It really does.
Yeah.
At this point. And so on December 26, 1882, his animal trap received a patent, number 269,766. Now, the premise was pretty simple. Just place the wooden trap outside a known rat hole and wait. The moment a rodent steps upon a lever at the very front of the trap, the attached revolver would fire, thereby killing the said rodent.
A revolver?
Yeah, a gun.
His mousetrap had a cocked revolver attached to it.
That it did.
Oh my God. Wow.
Now, Williams does not explain the alarm part of the trap, although he may be referring to the sound of the gunshot itself.
Well, that would tip you off that it needs to be reset.
You would think so.
Yeah.
He also claims that his improved animal trap has other uses. For example, you could place the animal trap in a windowsill. That case, if any human tried to access your home through a closed window, the revolver would fire.
Oh, lovely.
He said in his application, this invention may also be used in connection to a door or window, so as to kill any person or thing opening the said window to which it is attached.
Any person or thing?
Well, yeah.
What sort of thing would be trying to open a window?
I don't know, bears, Bigfoot.
Bigfoot. Kaboom! I got myself a Bigfoot.
Yeah, it's pretty silly. Because, I mean, think about it. This gun goes off, say, just the wind blew it open for some reason. It wasn't locked down. And it fired across at the neighbor's home.
Right.
You don't know if the postman's going by, the milkman, or...
Right. I'm thinking of all the times that people, lock themselves out of their houses. And what if your spouse forgets to tell you that they put the new and improved animal trap in the window, and you go to try to get in your house through the window?
Well, then it's time to find a new spouse.
One way or another.
Now, moving on. Fires have also been a major fear for people throughout history, but especially in cities like New York, and especially for those living in tenements. In 1909, inventor Pasquale Negro, a quote, subject of the kings of England and resident of Clarksville, Tennessee, applied for a patent for his fire escape. Now, I would hope that this invention was put through several trial runs first, but I don't think the idea really ever took off, despite being granted a patent on February 9th. Negro claimed that in the event of a fire, all you had to do was go to the nearest window, slip your arms through some straps, buckle a third strap around your waist, and hold your arms out. The fabric wings would then open up, and all you had to do was jump. His invention would help you safely fly to the ground.
So like giant bat wings for people.
Like bird wings.
Bird wings.
Yep. We've seen it in the old movies and cartoons.
Yeah.
It never really works.
No.
Negro wrote, in operation, the wearer engages the loops with his hands and is prepared to leap. The air imprisoned beneath the fabric material, serving to uphold the wearer and break the force of his fall.
Oh, wait. So your tenement is on fire.
Yep.
And you're going to strap this thing on after you get outside the window, I would assume, because how are you going to fit through the window if you put it on before?
I think you fold them up. Like you put your arms to your side, perhaps, and then...
Okay. And then you're supposed to just...
like a bird.
Put your arms out and jump off the building, and this sudden current of air is going to gently let you glide to the ground.
Right. Yeah, you're not going to fly away. You're going to just kind of...
plummet.
I mean, he'd been better off using an umbrella.
I know.
A heavy-duty umbrella.
Right.
So with that said, all he needed was $33,000 to get his invention flying off the shelves and into the hands of everyone who wanted one.
Can you imagine the trial runs for that thing? They couldn't have had any because we'd have stories of people that, unsuccessfully tried his invention.
Well, here's the thing. Normally, if you're going to do an invention, you have to trial run it in some way.
Right. But this was 1902, 1903?
Yeah.
1909.
Maybe he used cats or dogs.
Maybe.
As experimental.
Yeah, but a cat or a dog can't extend their arms out. Raise your arms, Fluffy.
This is true. I don't know. Pretty crazy. And thankfully, no one ever really bought it.
Right.
It didn't get off the ground. Charles G. Purdy of Brooklyn, New York, was very concerned about how little people needed to chew in 1921.
Needed to what?
Chew.
Chew. Okay.
He wrote in his patent application, "It is well known that modern methods of preparing food usually result in a cooked food requiring little or no mastication. The use of such foods results in decayed teeth, undeveloped jaws, and various other complications due solely to the lack of exercise attendant on proper mastication."
All right.
And so he invented a device that would help people get proper mouth exercise. All you'd have to do is insert a plate between your upper and lower teeth. The plate was attached to a metal spring, which you could somehow attach to a wall or, quote, other suitable support. When you pulled back far enough, the spring would give your mouth a, quote, series of 80 short jerks or impulses, which would be transmitted to the teeth in order to produce a strain, which will give the organs of the mouth and had proper exercise to maintain healthy circulation. Now, if you lived with someone who also cared about proper chewing, there was a tandem version. Instead of hooking the spring to a wall, you could get a version that had a second plate at the other end. You and your beloved could sit facing each other, several feet apart, and essentially play tug-of-war with your mouths.
Now that sounds like a fun evening.
It's pretty interesting.
I'd rather just chew my food.
Chewing gum would have been better. Or beef jerky or something like that.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even think of that.
Well, let's go back to the problems of urban living. In 1909, you could use the winged personal fire escape I mentioned earlier, but you could also be the cool mom on the block if you had one of these inventions: window cages for babies. In fact, as far back as 1908, Eleanor Roosevelt hung a wire box outside her New York City apartment window that she used to put her daughter Anna inside for naps. But suspended baby cages really came into vogue in 1922. Based on the idea that fresh air, especially cold fresh air, was good for babies' immune systems, mesh wire cages were hung outside apartment windows all the time.
What now?
Mesh wire cages. You've seen them.
Suspended outside of apartment windows.
Yeah.
In cities.
Exactly.
And you put your baby in it.
Yeah. And they got fresh air. And they got to look around.
Right.
They got that sense of their being, floating in the air, I guess.
And they could watch the guy with the bat wings go flying by.
God. Can you imagine peeing down on somebody?
Peeing down on somebody?
Yeah. They're babies.
They had diapers on, didn't they?
Yeah, they were cloth back then, weren't they? What
yes.
if they got kind
of,
of,
they would have been cloth.
Well, what if they got too wet?
I don't know.
Being suspended in a wire cage, sometimes 30 or 50 feet off the ground, was considered a great way for a baby's appetite and digestion to be improved, just because fresh air would purify their blood. Emma Reed of Spokane, Washington, submitted her patent for the portable baby cage in 1922. It became an instant hit for people who didn't have their own backyards. While a parent was busy, they could just pop their baby into the cage to let them dangle above the ground. It was great.
Oh my God.
The baby's health was improved, and you also might get a nice breeze inside your apartment. And if you wanted to feel sufficiently alarmed, just look at the pics of these things online.
They are truly they're unnerving. You look at the pictures and your whole instinct says, that is not safe, that is not okay.
Well, here's the thing for me. I kind of think they are. I've seen these pictures years and years and years ago. And I thought they were just brilliant. I mean, the cage can't go anywhere.
Yeah, you hope.
But here's the thing, they're eventually going to outgrow these things. But then, on the bright side, I guess you could always let your cat lay out in them or your dog, and they could get a nice breeze instead of,
They're not in the window, they're outside the window. Yeah, they're hanging on the outside of the building.
What could go wrong?
Right. So I'm looking at this picture in the middle of the ones that we have embedded in our episode in front of us. And it's this woman leaning out a window that looks like it's on the 50th story of a building, because you can see the entire top of the city skyline.
Oh, yeah. It's at least that far up. Yes.
And she's got this big grin on her face as it looks like her 2-month-old baby is in this cage suspended thousands of feet above the ground.
I would love to have been a child back then in one of these and just
peed off the edge.
See what it felt like.
Yeah. Blech.
Well, I think it would be cool to have an adult one where you could lay out there in the summer when it's too hot, or maybe. And at night you could get the fresh air, the wind going over you. You're pretty high up.
I think it's the same as the mountaineers that when they're climbing up the side of a mountain have those suspended cots that they put off the side.
Exactly.
It's exactly the same thing.
Well, I don't really think it's all that crazy myself. So, we've all been to a nice dinner at a friend's house during the summer, where it's been necessary to keep the stick of butter in a butter dish. It just makes sense to keep your stick of butter covered when there's flies around and other bugs. Or even if the sun might be beating down, you kind of want to protect your butter. But it can be kind of a pain to keep the butter cover on at all times. Everyone would have to take the cover off, put the cover back on, and it's a real pain in the ass. Well, back in the 1950s, everyone got their butter in sticks, and keeping the butter dish cover on during dinner just wasn't all that practical. But This led to an even bigger problem: accidentally dragging your sleeve through the top of the butter as you reached across the table for the salt and pepper.
Oh, it must have been a rampant problem.
Well, it must have been, because there was a need to invent something because of it. Well, with that said, enter Russell E. Oakes, the inventor of the butter protector. Oakes actually invented all kinds of things, which he readily admitted were more to make people happy rather than trying to be helpful. His butter protector was essentially a plastic dome made out of separate spindles. It looks like one of those spindly metal scalp massagers. You would just place it over your stick of butter, which made it virtually impossible to brush your sleeves or the cuffs of your dress, shirt, or suit against the butter.
But I don't understand. What's the difference between having to pick up and move the butter protector out of the way so you could still get to your butter versus moving the cover of the butter dish out of the way?
I don't know. I didn't come up with a dumb idea.
That's right. This is the weirdest inventions, not the best. Okay, I got it.
But it was Donald B. Pointer who really pushed the boundaries of necessity with his invention. The year was 1981, and apparently Pointer had an issue with having to lick stamps. Now, I don't know if his profession required him to do a lot of stamp licking, but he was genuinely concerned with the health risk of licking the adhesive.
Well, yeah, that's how George's fiancée died on Seinfeld. They weren't stamps, they were envelope adhesives, but, she keeled over.
Yeah, she did. He worried that the adhesive itself might be bad for you, but that it also posed some sanitation risk. Plus, stamps tasted really bad. And so he thought there had to be a better way. Now, I want you all to picture a small wooden box. At the top is a small reservoir for water. Inside is some sort of mechanism. And now picture, on the front of the box, a pair of lips and a tongue protruding out through them, just ready to lick away at your many, many stamps. Now, allow me to read this description that he provided from his patent application. The device includes an enclosure member having an open-top liquid container. A spring-biased linkage member is pivotally mounted within the enclosure member and biased to a predetermined position. A moistening member is pivotally mounted to the linkage member, about an axis substantially parallel to the linkage member's pivotal axis.
I think he just likes saying member.
The moistening member is movable from a first position in which it is disposed in the open top container to a second position in which it is extended outwardly from the enclosure member. A movable plunger member engages the link member to force rotation thereof against the spring bias and to move the moistening member between first and second positions. The tongue-like moistening member contains an upper surface which is formed of an absorbent sponge-like material capable of absorbing and retaining moisture. What the fuck?
Well, the linkage member is attached to the moistening member, which is attached to some other sort of member.
It seems to me that he could have described it a little bit more clear.
Right. It's a wooden box with a hole in it, with lips attached to the front, and a tongue sticking out.
Yeah, I bet people bought this, but they didn't use it to lick stamps.
I guarantee it.
So, that seems pretty practical to me. I mean, who doesn't want a wooden box with a tongue sticking out of it? But, unfortunately, I couldn't find any images online of any prototypes. So, if there's one out there somewhere, it probably belongs in a museum.
That's a good idea, actually.
Well, I think this thing should be reconstructed.
Or constructed if it never has been.
Well, I imagine he made one at some point.
Right. But can you imagine a museum filled with all of these bizarre patented inventions? I mean, I'd go to a museum that has like a mannequin with the wings, the fire escape wings, and
Oh, yeah.
one with the stamp licking box and all these other things. That'd be cool.
Well, this is just a few.
Right.
There's got to be hundreds, if not thousands, out there.
Yeah, I would assume.
That are pretty peculiar.
Yes.
I would love to see a place like that.
I know.
I don't know. Somebody should go through all these patents and create prototypes, if there aren't already any, and put them all together.
Yeah.
In one exhibit.
Yeah. That would be really cool. And I think, here's what I think. I think the baby cage one should have like a VR kind of component to it. And I think that they should hand you either a baby doll, but in the VR you think is a real baby. And I think you should have to place it in the cage that's allegedly dangling thousands of feet above the ground outside of the apartment window. I want to see if you could do it.
Oh, I could do it. No problem.
As I would be beating on you from behind, screeching at you not to do it.
I really don't see a problem with that one.
Really?
Yeah, not at all. They were fastened very well to the sides of the apartments. I mean, from what I seen a long time ago, there were hundreds of these things.
All different shapes and sizes and configurations.
And really, if you had something to secure this in case it did fall off, I mean, like a rope, chain or something like that. How far is it really going to go?
How come they don't exist anymore then?
Probably pollution. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's it. It's not fresh air anymore. Like it was in 1909 or 1922 or what? Yeah, it was 1922. Yeah, because our cities were, super clean air in the 1920s.
I don't know. It's just a guess.
Yeah.
You don't know any more than I do.
I don't. In this instance.
Perhaps that high up, it wasn't so bad.
Oh, maybe.
People do it with cats now. You've seen these things that attach to the outside of windows where people let their pets go out. They're not just on the inside. Some people have them where they're attached, they look like plastic and they go out and their cats can be outside.
Huh. What happens if a bird comes along and sits on the top of the cage and then shits all over your baby?
You just wipe it off.
Okay.
I don't know. I'd have had to been there. But I would think it's better than the baby being stuck inside all the time and breathing crappy air.
Well, they could also put the baby in a carriage and take it downstairs and go outside for a walk.
From what I saw, this was a lot, pretty far up. By the time you ride the elevator down, put your kid in the, carriage, take it for a walk. Who's got time for that? You can just stick it out the window. Plus, you can bake or cook at the same time if you're doing dinner.
Right.
Having sex or whatever, let's just put the baby outside the window while we go at it. Nobody wants the baby watching it from its crib. That's creepy. You know what I'm saying? You ever wanted some alone time and going, oh, the baby's not asleep. It's not like you could throw a blanket over its head or anything.
You wait till the baby's asleep. You don't...
Not back then. All you had to do is put it outside the window.
Close the curtains.
Yeah. All right, everybody. I don't know. We'll post some of these pics of inventions.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
On our Facebook page.
Yes. And as always, if you'd like to know more about any of these wacky inventions, like Wes said, I'm sure there's a lot more on that website than he chose for tonight's episode.
Yeah, go through and check them out.
Yeah. And if you'd like to know more about the Nederlander Theater, which was once the Oriental, which was built on top of the site of the Iroquois. You can always check our sources in our show notes.
All right, everyone. Join us again next week for an all-new episode of Where Our Minds Wander.
See you soon. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to traveling with you again to the places where our minds wander.
If you like what you heard, please take a moment and provide us with a 5-star rating and a comment on your favorite listening platform. It really helps us move up the list and become more visible on the podcast charts so new people can find us.
And thank you all for your continued support.
See you next week for an all-new episode.